Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is George Howson, and today we are here to preview the 2025 Bahrain Grand Prix. Joining me today, we have Grid Talk's Owain Medford,
Hello.
Sophia Richmond,
Hi.
and Kristin Horvath.
Hello.
Right, so let's dive into this race. So we've got a fair few talking points to get through here. Let's start like we normally do, though, with our favourite memories of Bahrain through the years. This is a track that's been on the calendar now for over 20 years. It started as a day race and it's been a night race for just over 10 years now. Owain, what are your favourite memories of Bahrain over the years in Formula One?
I feel so glad that you've come to me first. To be honest with you, I get to steal this one. There's a lot of like good memories of Bahrain, but I think the parts there's sort of like maybe the 2005 race, I think, which is the hottest race ever, with just a load of retirements and engine blow-ups. But the one I'm going to pick and steal from everyone else is the 2014 race. Yeah, it was the third race of the season, and there'd been sort of a dominant victory by Lewis Hamilton in Malaysia the race before, and prior to that, Lewis Hamilton hadn't even made it to the first pit stop as they were saving the engine as he had an issue with the very start of these hybrid power units. But seeing the battles. I think just before the first pit stop between the Mercedes and then into the last few laps of the race where Lewis Hamilton had the harder set of tyres and Nico Rosberg had the softs, and just watching those battles around this Bahrain track, which we've actually done a watch along of. If you want to go and search that out, it's 2 hours long, and you get to see sort of our view on what happened during that sort of not crazy but just epic race where I don't think we've ever seen teammates being allowed to fight like that. Um, and it was before the relationship deteriorated, so it was still all in good faith, and it was so exciting. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It was so exciting to see that. None of this stay behind, get the points. It was all you're fighting for the championship, go for it, which is great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I came to you first because I know about that 2014 watch along because I was on it as well. I just thought we've got to say it. We've literally done a 2 hour podcast about it. But yeah, that 2014 race was an absolute epic. Maybe we'll see some scenes like that this year between the two McLarens, perhaps, will we? Who knows? Who knows? But Kristen, I'll come to you next. What are your favourite memories of Bahrain through the years? Because, like Owain said, there's been some very impressive jewels in the desert over the years in Sakhir.
Correct. And of course, he got lucky to be called on first because that 2014, it really was a doozy. Honestly, I think the past couple of years, 2021, 22, 23, 24, have been quite exceptional as well. With some of the battles that we've seen, I think it was in 21 that we saw Hamilton and Verstappen, start going after each other there. And we know how that season ended. And then I will say, as I was refreshing my memory today and watching some of the history of this Grand Prix, to see last year, to see Alonso, just kind of come across that line and get third with that car was so special. We felt an energy of Alonso, coming back. And unfortunately, we saw that the car really wasn't going to last all year long for him. But to see Sainz and Leclerc, go after each other as well. And then also Leclerc and, Verstappen. I think it was in 22, go after each other on track. There have been some doozies out there in the past 4 years alone. So it's been exciting, and it's good to I like this race now where it is, and it's been moved back and forth between, let's have it right after testing to, let's put it further down in the lineup, and I think this is a perfect fit for it.
Yeah, it's found a home early on in the season, not being quite the first round, but one of the first rounds of the season. And I agree that that 2022 battle between Verstappen and Leclerc was pretty epic. And we got a Ferrari 1-2 in the end, which was not, unfortunately, a sign of things to come for the rest of the season. Ferrari did rather fall apart a little bit after that in the season. But yeah, Bahrain is usually an entertaining one. It's a big It's a very testing track on the cars as well, Sophia, because it's one of the heaviest tracks of the season in terms of brakes. It's also quite difficult because you've got the dust blowing in from the desert, which I believe they spray with glue to actually try and stop that happening. But it still does happen. It still does see some unusual weather. It's very windy there as well. It is quite a challenging circuit for the drivers, even though they have a lot of experience of it earlier on for pre-season testing.
Yeah, definitely. I think the big thing is also looking now as well, the fact that we're not opening with Bahrain, looking at the data difference, albeit obviously in testing this year, the weather was slightly cooler. This weekend, I believe it's cooler-ish at 32 degrees, whereas most of the early part of the week is like 35. So obviously, even though it's only 3 degrees, that could also make a big difference. We saw obviously again comparing to the testing, we saw some cars that were more of the outliers kind of doing well in testing. Could this be an indication of how they are going to do for this race weekend? And as well, they have 3 race weekends under the belt, which I think is probably better to look at the data as well compared to going testing and then straight into round one at the same track as well, because there's not that much time for the drivers to get into race mode. Obviously, especially with these rookies or new drivers changing to new teams as well, having a few races under the belt, and even as a team meshing together, now they have the time to kind of look at the data and the differences between the two. But going back about the 1-2s as well, this has been a historical 1-2 circuit in the last, I would say, 7 years. So 2019, it started off with a 1-2 with Mercedes. 2020 and 2021 did not, but they were both Lewis and Max 1-2s. 2022 was Ferrari 1-2, and 23 and 24 were both Red Bull 1-2s. So if you look at the pattern, it could look like to be another 1-2. Which team I'm hoping, as a McLaren fan, it is McLaren. They're due yet to have a nice 1-2 in Bahrain, probably, compared to the other teams. I'm not expecting Red Bull to kind of be it. It might turn into an outlier situation again with Max coming in second. As well, Max has been on the podium for the last 4 out of the 5 years. And at one time was a DNF, a double DNF for Red Bull as well. So there's a lot of interesting things to look at. And we've had a few teams that either both drivers do well or both drivers do not as well. So definitely something to take a look at for this weekend coming.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting that you mentioned McLaren. And I had to do a double, triple take of this, but they've never won in Bahrain, despite Mansour Ogier back in the day being a big investor in the team, despite us racing here all the way back to 2004, them having some incredible drivers, some championship winning drivers in that team. They have never won in Bahrain, somehow. And with what just happened a week ago, well, literally a day ago as we record this, Owain, in Japan, obviously getting what some might see as a solid 2-3 double podium, good points for the Constructors' Championship, but ultimately we're, kind of missing out on that win. Are McLaren going to be a bit concerned? Because this track has never really favoured them over the years. They've never had great results here. Even, I think last year, I know obviously the car improved a lot, but I think they were well outside the points. I think they were seventh and eighth or something like that, Piastri and Norris. Are they going to be a bit worried? Because some people say, well, Verstappen did really well to put it on pole and just sort of kept it there, but he had good pace. He had the measure of the McLarens throughout that race.
Um, yeah, I kind of think, to be honest, that McLaren's kind of in a different scenario in that they kind of have the fastest car, but it's not by much. Is the thing that it's not by a huge amount. Like clearly, it took a kind of superhuman effort, and then by Max, and then they just could not get it together in the race, and I think they mismanaged it terribly in Japan. But I think this year at Bahrain might be a little different. Obviously, it's never been resurfaced. We hear that every year now. It's never been resurfaced, so it's very, very aggressive on the tyres. It's quite abrasive, and it really is a circuit that punishes the rear tyres. So it's a completely different challenge to what's come prior to this, in the first 3 races. And I genuinely think that the partially the reason that we do see these 2x2s is similar to the reason that we get the 2x2s at Barcelona when we used to go testing there. Is that it's a kind of a the teams have so much data on it that they absolutely they know how to set the car up right. I don't think I think if they do lose this, it'll be, as a result of what happened in Japan. I think it's going to be a result of mismanaging the situation. And I think really, I know the drivers' motivation is going to be different to the teams, but they need to they basically need to lay down the law to the drivers, read them the riot acts, and just go, right, no, like no fighting, get out of 1-2 and get out front and don't hit each other. You can, once you've got the lead quite comfortably in the constructors, it's easier. But they're giving up race wins by sort of not doing that and trying to sort of play it safe. I think they need to take a little bit more risk, and it should be easier in Bahrain because they have two cars. We don't obviously know how Tsunoda's going to perform, but we know Max is going to be right up there. Barring anything, terrible, like I don't know, like a change of personality, or if he hits his head or something, getting out of bed, he'd have to be completely different to be any slower. So they really have to fight for this thing, and it should suit them. I feel like it's going to trend that way because they should be able to set the car up as needed to be the fastest, and they are the fastest on, just anyway, really. So I think it's a case of no, but if they mismanage it, it will be of their own making, and that's when it's got to start to be an issue for them. They need to manage this correctly, because the lap time speed is there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that car is pretty clearly the fastest by at least a little margin, but it's all about how they manage it. I mean, I still, for the life of me, don't know why they didn't swap positions and give Oscar Piastri a chance to chase down Verstappen. You had a 10-second gap behind you to Leclerc, like you can afford to take a risk, but for some reason McLaren just played it unnaturally safe and hoped that the guy ahead of them, who's won the last four world championships and over 60 races, would make a mistake. Shockingly, he didn't. But there we go. I mean, we spoke about it quite a bit. I mean, the people on the review show as well for Japan spoke about it as well, Kristin. But it is a bit strange that McLaren didn't take a risk in Japan with the advantage they had to the rest of the field. And the narrative now has shifted from, oh, McLaren are going to win pretty much every race and just walk this championship to, well, actually, there's only 1 point between Norris and Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. It's all turned on its head very quickly.
It really has. And this race, I'm so curious to see what is going to happen in this race because McLaren has not, done well here in Bahrain, as we've talked about. And here we're saying again, they have the fastest car. So how is it going to perform? What is the pace of this going to be? And again, the bigger question comes out strategically, what are they going to do with these two drivers? That's where there's the big wonder again. They're going from one extreme one year, they don't have a number one to another extreme, okay. No, I think we're going to let Lando, kind of hedge this out here in the first couple races and make Piastri wait a little bit. And none of us can get inside of their minds. And I think we all want to right now, to figure out what's going to happen. What can we do to say, hey, do this? We think, as it's from where we sit, we can say all we can say. And it's a tough job that they do have. How they're managing it is interesting. I will just kind of keep it like that. I don't know that it benefits them. And we're just going to have to see where it goes with what they're going to do with these two drivers, because there could just be the rivalry brewing here, and for this year and the next couple of years, that's going to get big as we've seen other rivalries in the past happen. So waiting to see.
Waiting to see indeed. Yeah, it's definitely brewing. There's definitely potential there, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in Bahrain. Like we said earlier as well. It's one of them tracks where we've seen some pretty interesting teammate battles over the years as well. But the pessimists may come into this one, Sophia, thinking that this is not going to be a particularly great race. We had pre-season testing, obviously, at Bahrain. Like you said, we've got so much data. The guys would have run thousands upon thousands of laps. Optimistically, you might say, well, the conditions were very different. Then it was cold and wet, and this time it's going to be hot and dry, most likely, like we normally see in Bahrain. We did have pre-season testing last year in Bahrain as well, admittedly, immediately before the Grand Prix, and the Grand Prix was not amazing. There wasn't a lot of changes there at all. Similarly as well, I think, off the top of my head, there was one change in the top 10 in Bahrain in 2024, and we're coming off of Japan, where we had one change in the entire top 10. Albeit, Bahrain is definitely a track where you can overtake more easily, but are we potentially going to get an old school Catalonia race where we've got so much data and everybody's just running the race in the Noah's Ark formation?
100%. I've already pre understood like how Bahrain's going to be is you're going to have this actually I believe is going to be a really key turning point for some of these lower teams to look at how much they're willing to invest for the rest of the season for the 2025 car or move into the 2026 car. I mentioned it in the Japan preview show as well about understanding when is going to be the time to flip the switch and kind of give up on the 2025 season per se, for, especially these lower teams, and focus most of their development on this new regulations for next season. I think with McLaren and some of the bigger teams, like this is also not the time to play it safe because we've seen it what happened with last season with Max. Like because Max had took risks in the beginning of the season and did some good races and race wins, he was able to get the points that was needed to secure the drivers' championship. McLaren should be taking those risks straight away. The constructors is a different story. Let's be honest. The constructors is more safer than the drivers championship for both of the McLaren. So it's again that competition of who's number one, who's number two in the drivers. Both of these drivers are in good contention already. So are they trying to like keep both of them happy and then see one jumps the bullet over the other, or it's as Kristin said as well, like there's so much to kind of think about as well. But I'm already preempting Bahrain to be boring. It'll be very interesting to look at the data and look at the comparisons, even comparing to last season's testing as well. Obviously, there has been developments, but with the weather being very unpredictable for this season's testing as well, that kind of also adds another layer. But there will be chances of overtaking. I don't anticipate DNFs. And as well, last season was the first time in F1 opening history that there was no retirements as well. We had a few drivers lap down, which was great, but like all drivers were able to somewhat finish. So I'm hoping that'll be another case because I think some of these teams are going to play it safe, look at the cross data, look at how they did in testing, look how they did last season as well, and see, can we improve this season? If not, screw it. We're going to focus on 2026 now and work from there as well.
I imagine the debriefs go exactly like that in that case, yeah. But, you know, this is something I've actually just thought of on the fly and something that I did kind of see a few videos about this. It's a weird position that F1 has found itself in now, Owain, because we've got the cars being competitive. They are so close to one another, particularly in qualifying. There's like a second between them around most track, maybe a second and a half field spread. It's tiny. But the downside of that is that cars can't overtake each other for the most part because there's not that much pace difference, particularly around Suzuka, like we saw last weekend, obviously. So it's strange how F1 fans have got what they wanted. They've got the field being close together, but in terms of the on-track action, it can lead to dull races like we saw in Suzuka this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things as well. Like it's something you see a lot in a lot of formula, which have more sort of prescribed ways of going racing. So I hate to keep referencing it, but you know what? I learned so much more from it in some ways. But endurance racing.
Wait,
It's
Owain,
better.
you watch endurance racing? I didn't
On
know.
occasion, yeah.
You never mentioned it.
No, literally never. But the thing is, it's important because there's one difference between the way that endurance racing now goes racing and the way Formula One goes racing, which is that you'll have you know if you've dabbled in in any kind of endurance racing, you'll have probably heard something called BOP, which is balance of performance. What it is it's a computer algorithm that's designed so that all these various different teams, you know, and the car manufacturers, you can have a car that isn't necessarily the most performant. You know, it might be front engine and rear wheel drive rather than, you know, mid engine and rear wheel drive, which is better generally for setting up a performance car. And what it does is it's designed to keep the field interesting. And if you look at various different endurance races like Le Mans 2017 and things like that, when the BOP works, the cars are nice and close together. And you have fights for the entirety of the race. And what it comes down to is what it ends up coming down to is the operational prowess of the teams. You know, it comes down to whether they make mistakes or not. And the problem that you have in Formula One is that in BOP, in the endurance racing side of things, in all forms of it, you have this control over the amount of downforce that you can actually produce. And the shapes of the cars are more conducive to not disturbing the air that much. And what you don't have in Formula One is that check on that part, because really you're trying to get the most downforce possible. if you've got either a downforce advantage or a horsepower advantage, then you can start using one or the other to make yourself faster. And what it incentivizes is making it more difficult for the people behind. And then therefore, without this check on how much, on the efficiency figure of the downforce, you would kind of end up in this scenario where we're just producing loads and loads of dirty air. And as the as the brake, as the amount of grip the cars can produce through the downforce increases, the braking zones get shorter. And what that means is that you don't have the ability for the really good drivers on the brakes, someone like Daniel Ricciardo or Lewis Hamilton, obviously prime Daniel Ricciardo, or Max Verstappen or people like that, to start playing around and really show their prowess. And that's the issue we have. There's two major stops in Suzuka, two over the entire lap, and without that, we have very close race. With that, we have very close racing, but their cars are, they're stuck next to each other, and they, you can't do anything about it. You can't show your skill as a late breaker because there isn't enough. The first corner of Suzuka, you're sitting going into it at 185 miles an hour, and it's a lift off. It's a lift off into the second corner. Into the first corner to brake for the second. It's not. You don't have to brake for it anymore. There's no opportunity. There's less opportunity, for a mistake, and the margin of error gets much larger. And I think this is the problem with Formula One, is that currently I don't want to turn it into endurance racing. It's a completely different skill and discipline, because they're not going to put a check on the amount of downforce that teams are going to try and produce. So you're going to have this thing where we're going to have to wait for mistakes, and the teams are getting so good at it by necessity that, unfortunately, I think we are going to get this. I don't know how to fix that beyond, I think now we're okay. Now the effort has to maybe be on, okay, we fix the dirty air problem somewhat with this huge amounts of downforce but off cars that have ground effect, but we haven't fixed the fact that the cars are 900 kilos at the start of a race. I think that we're going to constantly be sort of railing against this, but yeah, it's I think it's a difficult problem to solve. But maybe that's the next option that we need to look into. Is right, we need to get these cars so that they can handle and so that they are actually a bit more difficult to drive. I'm not saying they're easy, but I'm not saying they're as hard with how good the teams are.
Well, that's the thing. It's all relative, isn't it? I mean, we're getting a big regulation change up next year anyway, so I imagine they're not going to try and fix anything for this year. But we'll see. It's a weird situation. I mean, the thing I kept thinking about as well is the fact that it was cold and we didn't really get that much tyre wear as well. Was we kind of had, in a sense, the similar sort of race like we used to have in the so-called glory days when we used to have the tyre wars. These tyres that had never wear down. And surprise, surprise, we got what was for the most part a typical V10 era race. It was not that great. We saw one on-track overtake, or at least in the top 10 anyway. Hamilton getting past Hadjar, that was it. So, yeah, interesting stuff for sure. We want to hear what you guys have to think as well. Of course, you can contact us. You can follow us anywhere on the social medias that has the @ symbol. You can find us at Grid Talk UK. And if you're enjoying this podcast, if you're liking this discussion as well, we'd really appreciate it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts as well, of course. And if you go to YouTube and subscribe to us, you can find out when we go out next. We go out live after every single Grand Prix, and we'll be doing the same thing for Bahrain as well. It is 7 p.m. UK time on Sunday this weekend for that. But yeah, let's talk about Ferrari next, Kristin, because it's been a very up and down season for them, to say the least. They were lackluster in Australia. In the Hamilton anyway, they were great in the China Sprint, in the Chinese Grand Prix. They looked a bit average. Then they got disqualified in Japan. A bit average again. Is this kind of where Ferrari are? Because until they get that fabled new floor, which was meant to come for Japan, but it hasn't, maybe it'll be here for Bahrain. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. But they kind of seem like the 3rd or 4th fastest team, which is not really what we were expecting after testing.
No, I think they're all very disappointed right now, from Fred to Charles to Lewis, obviously, and having problems with, I think he was talking about his tail wing, in this last race as well. I think Ferrari right now is going to sit 4th until they do get that new floorboard. And like we, saw with, I think, Mercedes it was last year when they were getting a new floorboard, and how many times they had to test it out and make those changes to get it right, and how many races they had to go through to get it done, and it takes time. Um, but at the same time, we have seen McLaren start off a season so bad, and then in a couple races, man, they are setting a pace real quick, and they're sticking with it. Is that something Ferrari can do? Absolutely. They do have the right engineers behind them. They definitely have built an incredible team, and they have two phenomenal drivers. So I think it is something they can overcome, and I hope it's something quickly. But again, time will tell. I would like to see, especially at this track, I would like to see, Lewis and Charles go after each other, and be up there in podium reach for sure. And maybe this car might favor this track. Who knows? Each car is different on each track, and each driver is different on each track. And, there's so many other things that, like the weather we've talked about that comes into play as well. But I think they're gonna get all of those great heads together there, and they're gonna fix it sooner than later. It's just a very unfortunate start for them. So, two more races, they're gonna get it together. It's going to be my prediction.
We'll see what happens. It's Ferrari and it's very difficult to predict, but especially in this era of Formula One, the floor is such a fundamental part of that car because of the ground effect downforce. It is not something you can change easily, but if it does arrive, the new floor this weekend, let's hope it does the trick and gets them a better performance. Certainly a team that will be wanting to get a better performance this year. I mean, I think Sophia's laughing because I think she knows where I'm going with this already, is Alpine. Still pointless in 2025. It's early days, but their car doesn't look that amazing. It's not getting any points, and I just had to look this up because I still couldn't believe this. But of course, 12 months ago, Esteban Ocon got 3 penalties, and obviously Ocon does not drive for Alpine anymore. But I think it does kind of speak to how disorganized that team were. He lined up incorrectly on the grid. Then when he went to serve his penalty, he served it incorrectly. And then he got done for speeding in the pit lane when he came to serve that penalty. So, Sophia, it's chaotic at Alpine to say the least. I mean, I think with the greatest respect to him, Jack Doohan's incident during the second practice session, that does speak to the lack of preparation there, because if he went in, I doubt he did that spur of the moment, go in without going to turn one with a DRS open. Surely somebody should have tapped him on the shoulder, just like, are you sure about that? Are you sure you should be doing that?
I mean, it begged the bigger question of how was he allowed to do that, and obviously the safety precautions as well. I remember as much Jacques Villeneuve talking about it, and a few other ex-drivers talking about it as well, about the safety aspect, because obviously in F1 now everyone's focusing on the safety, as they should. Like, that should have not been even an option to have it open. I mean, Alpine, well, let me throw it back with the Ocon situation. That was the spur of the 10-second penalties, or the penalties to Ocon memes that have started over the years. Will we see that for the Haas? Who knows? But I mean, he's not been very favorable at that track, let's be honest. But with Alpine, yeah, like, there was good opportunities, but at the same time, they've just not been able to get a good control in the car for both of the drivers as well, more so Doohan over Gasly. And I think for Doohan as well, even though he is a rookie, he's also one of the rookies that has the least amount of race experience, especially at a lot of these tracks early on to the season that were not on his F2 calendar as well. So coming to that kind of understanding as well. And obviously you can do so much in sim racing, but then it doesn't actually equate to the real feel of actually being on the track and all the other external factors. So we do need to kind of give him a little bit more grace compared to some of the other rookies. I mean, obviously everyone's talking about, 5 race weekends, what's going to happen? Is he going to get gone? Is Franco Colapinto finally going to get to the seats? My hope is Paul Aaron, but that's just me being a little bit biased in that situation. But there is a lot to look out for. And I think Alpine, and I think I remember speaking about this in the preview as well. This will be, again, a really crucial point about when Alpine's ready to leave in that kind of 2025, because if they are already going to believe that they're going to be at the bottom, second to the bottom, and especially if the gap gets quite bigger, because the gap is getting already, because of the drivers, all the teams doing very well and being so close. If there's too much of a gap in the points in the constructors to begin with, they rather just keep where they are, extra time in the wind tunnel as well, which is obviously the benefit, especially with the new regulations. Maybe they will be okay being the bottom of the teams, but obviously that's not what the sponsors want. That's not what the fans want. The drivers don't want that as well, because that's going to affect like the morale and everything. But I was really hoping for Alpine to do better last weekend in Suzuka. Coming into Bahrain, they should be better, but we've also said that about other races as well, and we've seen Alpine not do well. I think their qualifying is probably going to be where they need to improve more. They've had some good opportunities as well in qualifying, but with this track, they are suited towards the bottom, but I'm hoping that they're at the top of the bottom, if that makes sense for it. And I really hope Doohan has a good weekend, because it's not been the start of his career that he's definitely not wanted in Formula One.
No, it's been chaotic for him for sure. But of course, like you alluded to, he's got a lot of experience around here from F2 and F3. He also did pre-season testing here literally a few months ago too, which should help him. But yeah, I mean that was a nasty crash. I'm really glad he's okay. That was a horrible one. Yeah, and they do need to look at that, because it's the only DRS zone on the calendar, I think, where you don't lift after the DRS zone, or like going into the corners. Like that's what he did. It was quite literally a rookie mistake, but yeah, for Jacques Villeneuve, the irony of Jacques Villeneuve saying about safety when he's the guy who went flat out up Eau Rouge with Zonta, I think it was, and both of them ended up having horrific crashes as a result. So if he's saying it's unsafe, it's really unsafe. So, oh, right. So, yeah, it's been, again, like McLaren are the best in terms of the car performance and everything like that, like we've alluded to quite a few times. But we do, in a sense, if you do count this Chinese sprint race, which I will do for this analogy, there was some heated debate before we started recording today about whether it counts as or not, but I'm counting it for this. Are we going to potentially get a fifth different winner from five different races, Owain? Because we've had the two McLarens win, we've had Hamilton win the sprint in China, and obviously Verstappen now in Japan. And if so, who's it going to be?
Oh, I see we're onto the predictions early.
Might as well do. Why not?
I'm just gonna you know what? I don't think anyone's gonna remember if I just predict that we're gonna get a fourth different winner in four different races. Yeah, no, I'm gonna say that no, I think it's gonna be a topsy-turvy enough race. I know that the teams do a lot of testing here, but I think we're gonna get a different outcome, a different set of winners. Maybe I think maybe that because the track is so well known, the teams will more of them will be able to get the setup kind of right, and that will leave more of them in a position where they're kind of in the same place on track. And I think that what we'll get is that we'll get more of a sort of I think we're going to get more of a the cream rising to the top sort of thing, where the drivers who have been there in battles and are very proficient in battles, not necessarily with the fastest car as well. So I'm going to predict that Ferrari are going to win the Bahrain Grand Prix. And I think, you know what, it's going to sound like copium or wishful thinking, but I'm going to predict that it's that wins.
British bias rearing its ugly head again. Never on the Grid Talk podcast. Unbelievable scenes. I mean, yeah, it'd definitely be a surprise if it happened. That new floor just turns out to be a cheat code. We'll have to see what happens.
That new floor's actually got a new engine attached. It's just got it in it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they wouldn't even attempt to do anything like that. No, absolutely not.
Ferrari,
anyway,
never.
No, and no, the FIA would definitely not turn a blind eye to that. Anyway, so. Those days are long gone. But yeah, so let's get into the actual predictions. And Owain's given a bit of a prelude to what he's gonna go with there. But Kristin, I'll start with you. What's your prediction for top three in the race and also the pole position, and not forgetting the bold prediction as well?
Oh, okay, great. I think there's a hunger that's in Max that I heard, in his crossing the finish line. It wasn't just, oh, that was a lovely race, but this was a guttural release he had. And I think that's been unleashed. And I think he is going to, he knows he has to fight right now for every pole position, every podium, and it's in him. So I'm going to say that Max is going to take pole. I'm also going to say that Max is going to win. I'm going to say that Lando is going to come in second. And here's where I'm going to go rogue. I'm going to say Kimi Antonelli is going to come in third. And is that my crazy prediction? Yeah, that's my crazy prediction.
They're no longer bold predictions, they're crazy predictions. They're really throwing it out there. No, those are fantastic, Kristin. Absolutely. Sophia, what are yours?
Oh, I mean, mine's is actually similar to Kristen a little bit, a little bit. I think Max will win. I think again off of how last weekend went, I think it's now the push. Again, it's a track that he has done very well, 4 out of 5 on podiums the last 5 races. So we'll go with that. Lando P2, and I'm gonna say Charles P3. I'm gonna say he might have a better out of Lewis in the Ferrari. I think the dynamic of Lewis and his engineers is still working, needs a little bit of work. So I think Charles's experience and relationship with the team will probably help him. With pole, though, I'm gonna change it because normally, well, the last 4 races, whoever was on pole actually won, including the sprint race this season. But I think Lando's going to get pole because, as we said before, McLaren is the fastest right now, fastest car. I just don't think he will convert the pole. And then my bold, I literally just slated them and it's really bad. But I think Alpine will get points. Whether that's one or both of the drivers, a point is what I'm hoping for. I said that for Williams last week as my bold. Let's hope the curse is not continuing, and I'm going to get Alpine with points.
It's a sad state of affairs that Alpine getting point is a pole prediction, but it is. It is right now. Oh, wait, you alluded to yours before. You said Hamilton for the win, but what's the rest of your official predictions? Let's get them set in stone.
Yeah, so second is Max Verstappen. Because I'm inventive. Charles Leclerc will get third. He will also get pole. And I haven't thought of a bold prediction. I was quickly trying to run it down. But I think the bold prediction would be both Red Bulls on the podium.
He's hedging his bets.
Yeah,
I think classic move on Grid Talk.
Yeah. They don't. Your bold prediction and all your other predictions don't have to overlap. But I'm going with that. I'm sticking with it. What now that Red Bull's only got one livery on the car, it will be much faster. That's what it is. That extra like 0.2 mil of vinyl. That's what slowed it down. That's what meant that they only outqualified everyone else by 0.012 of a second. That's what it is. So that's going to make Yuki faster.
Fine margins in Formula One. And if you want to see more from our hosts' predictions, we do have the predictions league going on at the moment. So and Sophia's doing rather well, as you can tell by the little move she's doing there.
I'm 1 point behind. I'm joint third. I'm coming.
Yeah, I'm not doing too good, to be honest. But that's not really a surprise, as we all know. I know nothing about Formula One. But nevertheless, I will give my predictions for this. I'm going to go, because he's had a few pole positions over the years here, and it's one of his best tracks. I'm going to go for Leclerc for pole position. On the podium, oh man, the podium. I do think I think they're going to get the first win in Bahrain. I feel like McLaren are going to do it. But I'm gonna go for Oscar. He looked really good in Japan. A similar part of the world, very different track. He's good around Qatar. I feel like he'll do better in Bahrain this time. But P2, I'm going to put Leclerc in P3. P2, I'm going to go Max. I've got a funny feeling that maybe a bit like you were saying, Sophia, maybe Lando will bottle it from a decent starting position. It wouldn't be the first time, and it probably won't be the last. Bold prediction wise, you know what? Because he did really well here on his debut in 2021. I'm going to go for Yuki for a top 5. I feel it's a track he knows well. He's done here well in the past. We'll see how it goes. He didn't do that badly in Japan, especially compared to Lawson. Maybe Bahrain will be a track that's more suitable to him. We'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, those are our predictions. Just want to give you guys a chance to promo anything you want as well. Owain, I did mention about the socials earlier for Grid Talk, but do you want to give it another run?
Yeah, so if you'd like to tell me how silly I am, or just chastise me for going on about endurance racing and just shoehorning it into every single Grid Talk podcast I'm on, then make sure you come and talk to us at Grid Talk UK on all of the social media services with the app, like Threads and Blue Sky. We'd love to talk to you, and that's where you can find out about whenever our shows are on and the lineups and the news. So please come and give us a follow on those.
Absolutely, yeah. Sophia, Formula 2 and Formula 3 are back this weekend for Bahrain. And where can you catch all the action?
Yeah, I'm so excited. There's a lot to cover. We have a new driver in Formula 3 as well for this race weekend as well. So it'll be very interesting to see. You can catch me on Formula Reports. I do smaller videos to cover primarily, again, Formula 2 and Formula 3. There's also articles written by the team as well. So you can find everything on all social media at Formula Reports and on their website.
Yeah, thank you. And you can find plenty of me on the video channels as well for Formula Reports. I'm usually ranting about something to do with Formula One or some other motorsport as well. You can find us just reports on pretty much everything it usually is. We're just past 10,000 subscribers as well on YouTube, which is absolutely awesome. Did an interview with Mario Andretti recently, which was just absolutely surreal. Don't even know how it managed. Yeah, go check that out if you've not already, of course. Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where our race review shows are recorded live about an hour or so after the event itself, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for F1 Grid Talk for our big back catalogue of shows at well over 400 episodes now. We'll probably hit 500 at some point this year or maybe early next year, including previews and reactions to the race results and our ongoing Grill the Grid Talk series as well, where you can definitely laugh at our expense some more as we get found out about how much we actually do and do not know about Formula One. Special thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support the show further and get some exclusive content, head over to our Patreon for plenty of that. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast, and goodbye.